Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba of LumumbaSpeaks.com, Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, in conjunction, of course, with Bequaline Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African Centered news and information. Back once again with a great show. If you're watching, make sure that you hit the subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Hit the notification bell and make sure you like, share, and donate. Just see here, Leroy Green says Jay-Z started the Reform Alliance to do that, then criticize fam. Well, we could get into that. So the link is in the description. The link will also be in the chat momentarily. So I hope, Leroy Green, that you could stay on, be part of the conversation. Um, and then, of course, we can address that very issue that you are bringing up in the chat. So once again, family, before we get started, we're going to discuss a couple of issues, right? Number one, we want to make sure uh, that here at Lumumba Speaks and Bequaline Network, there is diversity of thought. So it doesn't matter if you're on the left, you're on the right, or you're right down the middle. This is a place where you could be part of the conversation. Number two, facts over feelings, right? So we don't want to engage in ad hominems or red herrings. If you disagree with someone, attack the argument, not the person. Number three, this is a space of Black empowerment. Okay, I see. Okay, well, maybe you could, man, I really wish you could. I really wish you could, because I think it'd be a great conversation that we could have regarding the issue that you brought up, Brother Green. So one space of Black empowerment. So we do not allow epithets of any kind on our platform. We believe in the three N's of Black power: self-defense, self-respect, and of course self-determination. So if you use an epithet of any kind, of course you will be removed from the platform. Then, of course, last but not least, you can't make a claim that is, of course, patently false, right? Versus the facts. If you do, of course, I will come in like Mr. Sandman on Showtime at the Apollo. One of the reasons this is done is, being, if you are aware, I am Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba, an actual doctor, a serious scholar, PhD. And so it hurts my credibility if I allow someone to come on my platform and make claims that are adverse to facts. So we want to make sure that you can give your opinion, but if you make a claim that is patently false, I will have to chime in and, of course, make a course correction there. So then, of course, last but not least, here at Lumumba Speaks, our goal is not to disabuse people of their views. Our goal is simply to what? Challenge conventional wisdom and what is previously accepted as fact. So with that being said, family, I'm really going to get into my soliloquy at the top of the show, and then, of course, individuals could tap in and give their perspective. So, of course, today's show was titled "Is Jay-Z a Sellout?" We're examining his relationship with capitalism and, of course, the Black community. But Leroy Green brings up the Reform Alliance. Many people may be unaware. It's, of course, founded by Jay-Z, Meek Mill, Michael Rubin, Robert Kraft, Daniel, and a number of other individuals, right? Some, of course, associated with the NFL, of course. And so the Reform Alliance was founded in January of 2019. And one of the things that we find with the Reform Alliance, but the organization was formed in reaction to Meek Mill's November 2017 sentencing to 2 to 4 years in prison for violating the terms of his probation in, of course, Philadelphia. Shout out to the Illidale. The Reform Alliance goal is to transform probation and parole by changing law systems and cultures, create real pathways to work and well-being. Rubin helped to support Meek Mill's legal team, and which ended with a reversal on appeal, disqualification of the judge, and vacating all of his convictions other than a single misdemeanor. Jay, who served as executive producer for a time, the Khalif Browder story also took Michael Nova Grants to go to jail. And so this is really based on Meek Mill's personal experience that they created this, but the goal is to help pass, the Reform has helped pass legislation in California, Michigan, Louisiana, Virginia, and organization also work alongside criminal justice groups such as Cut 50 and the American Conservative Union. So the American Conservative Union, of course, many people may be aware, is a super PAC, conservative organization. So yes. So one of the biggest things that they promoted is, of course, criminal justice reform. Right, criminal justice reform, particularly in terms of sentencing, right? So, and we can address that, right? Creating this Reform Alliance and working to change policy, right? We know oftentimes individuals argue, particularly a good friend of mine, Dr. C.S. Johnson, that policy shapes behavior, legislation. And so, if I don't know if anyone's been on probation or parole before, I've been on probation before. Oftentimes, what you can find is individuals are have their probation revocated, have a revocation, and they have the argument, particularly with parole, that an individual can have a revocation, and they haven't committed an actual crime, right? There's so many checkpoints, right, and that it's almost times impossible for an individual to be able to successfully complete the parole. Probation may be a little bit different. I've always been of the ilk that the best way to, of course, combat the criminal justice system is to not get involved in it. And it's not difficult to not get involved in the criminal justice system with someone that's not a career criminal. Second issue, some people may take umbrage with Jay-Z, of course, creating this Reform Alliance. Wow, what for the past 20 years, 20 plus years, he made lyrics promoting criminality. In fact, I think he had a song where he says, "I'm proof that crime pays," right? So that would be a concern as well. So a couple of issues there, but I am familiar with the Reform Alliance. And of course, he's in a position, of course, because he's an extremely wealthy man, to actually put things together and put individuals in particular spaces to actually do something. We know one of the major issues we find, particularly in American politics, is if it isn't dollars, it doesn't make sense, right? And so he's able to do that. I'm not opposed in any way, shape, or form to, of course, seeking to reform, of course, the criminal justice system, particularly in terms of probation and parole. But we know, number one, the best way to address that issue is to not get involved in it in the first place. But in examining Jay-Z's relationship with capitalism and the Black community, I think there's a couple things that we would need to look at in terms of a track record of using Black leverage or the belief, of course, the belief of Jay-Z being what many people would call for the community, right? And ending up in a situation where it doesn't appear that the community is benefiting, right? So the first example would be Rockefeller Records. As many people may be aware of Jay-Z's meteoric rise from a drug dealer to, of course, media mogul, right? Music mogul. Struggled to get a deal, created Rockefeller Records with Kareem, Biggs, and then, of course, his Dame Dash. Okay, snapshot reviews. I see you're here. Jay-Z A Sellout. That's a good question. Should we automatically expect loyalty from celebrities? So this is something that we're going to get into. As you know, the link is in the description. Link is in the chat. Make sure you like, subscribe, and donate. You're watching LaMumbaspeaks.com in conjunction with Bequaline Network. So a couple things, right? But eventually, Rockefeller becomes a successful, of course, independent Black music label, right? There were several. We talk about Bad Boy. You could talk about Cash Money. You could talk about No Limit, Death Row, right? The beat goes on. You talk about LaFace. And then they sell Rockefeller. It was rather abrupt. This was around the time that, of course, Beanie Siegel was, of course, incarcerated on some rather serious charges. I think it was attempted murder. They sell Rockefeller. And part of the deal was they sold the last 50%, because 50% of Rockefeller was owned by Def Jam. They sold that in, I think, 1999 for $1.5 million. They come back and, of course, sell the other 50%. And in exchange for selling Rockefeller to Def Jam, Jay-Z becomes CEO and president of Def Jam Records. Right? Many people took issue with that, but they was able to create Roc Nation as a result of that. Some people took issue with that. We moved forward. He becomes CEO and the president of Def Jam Records. Many, and of course, in the industry, right, and this was something that was printed throughout media, thought that this was a watershed moment for artists, right, that there's actually a CEO and president of a major record label who is an artist themselves. So they would sympathize and, of course, take the position and fight for the plight of the artist. However, Jay-Z's tenure as CEO and president of Def Jam faced extreme scrutiny from, of course, some of his contemporaries, particularly DMX and, of course, LL Cool J. Ladies love Cool James and, of course, DMX Darkman X. And so some of the accusations was shrinking the budget for their album projects, delaying their album releases, shelving their album releases, not doing proper press or promotion. But at the same time, of course, he was allocating large budgets, significant promotion for his album, right? because at the time he of course had stated he retired with the Black Album. Then he comes back and he drops, of course, his album with the lead single, I think, was "Show Me What You Got," right? So that was an issue. But once again, this is seen as something where he's doing this for the Black community, but then eventually it was a benefit to himself and a detriment to the Black community. So that is an issue there. The next step would be, of course, the Brooklyn Nets. Many people are aware the Brooklyn Nets were formerly the New Jersey Nets. Shout out to ABA, Dr. J, and all of that. So, of course, there's a campaign to bring the Brooklyn Nets to Brooklyn, and then the New Jersey Nets. And, of course, the push was to build the Barclays Center. Many people took umbrage with this because they saw it as gentrification. If I remember correctly, they used part of it was eminent domain, right, where the government could come in and take property from private citizens, pay them a nominal fee. And, of course, a corporation or company can do that because they believe that it'd be a public good. And so many people may be unaware that Jay-Z was really the face of that marketing, right? To get Black people on board with building Barclays Center in the heart of Brooklyn. I mean, there were billboards of him in Times Square saying, "This is my team or our team." However, we later find out that Jay-Z owned 1/10 of 1% of the organization. He was simply considered a Black face. And not only is gentrification rampant in Brooklyn, but also we found significant. And one of the arguments that was made was that the members of the community would be able to work at the center. So it would bring in, of course, it would bring jobs. Individuals who were being fired, particularly Black women, were being fired for wearing their natural hair. So this is once again an example of Jay-Z positioning himself as someone who's doing something for the benefit of the community, but only benefited him and the community actually, but it was detrimental to, of course, the community. But then we go to the NFL, right? If I remember correctly, I saw an interview in which Jermaine Dupri said when it was announced that Jay-Z was, of course, in a agreement to, work with the NFL, he was shocked because he said the NFL initially had, of course, approached him. Jermaine Dupri, of course, founder of So Def Records, another successful Black record label. And he stated that one of the things that truly just really shocked him was the fact that when the NFL initially contacted Jermaine Dupri, he said that he reached out to Jay-Z and said, "What do you think about this?" And Jay-Z told him that he shouldn't do it. You don't believe me? You can check out the interview, right, on YouTube. And then he comes back and Jay-Z says he's now part of the deal. And Jay-Z states with Roger Goodell at the press conference, we're over kneeling, we're over protesting. That time is done. And Roger Goodell pats him on the back, "Attaboy, good boy." Right. So that is an issue. Then, of course, last but not least, we're talking about the Target board. This is something that was being promoted or led in some way, shape, or form by Pastor Jamal Bryant. We're not going to, of course, focus on him today. But Jay-Z purposely releases, of course, I believe the 25th anniversary, or some albums at Target. So purposely going against, of course, the will of the Black community. So these are just 5 examples that we find throughout Jay-Z's professional career in which, in some way, shape, or form, he sought to, of course, market himself as doing something that would be beneficial to the community, but actually turns out to be detrimental, right? So that's something to consider. Now, snapshot reviews, you stated, we talk about Jay-Z A Sellout. If you are a Nas fan, as I am, Nas has been saying this from the Raptors, right? He talked about, that he was making pop music. His goal was to ingratiate himself with whites. We know Dame Dash even said that one of the reasons he kept calling himself a businessman was because he was self-conscious about being a rapper and going into these boardrooms with, of course, them folks and seeking to do business. Another example that was given was 2023, if I remember correctly, was the 50th anniversary of hip hop. They had a big show, gathering, gala, you call it what you want, at Yankee Stadium. How Jay-Z wasn't there. He was at Tom Brady's birthday party, if I remember correctly, in the Hamptons. So these are some issues, right? These are some issues. Yeah, he was at Tom Brady's birthday party. He actually shares a birthday with my son, ironically, right? So you kind of see where he aligns, right? So should we automatically expect loyalty from celebrities? Absolutely not, right? Malcolm X taught us many years ago that celebrities are puppets. They are clowns. They are idiots, and they typically do not have the best interests of the community. one of the things that we find is that oftentimes celebrities aren't intellectuals in any way, shape, or form. These are entertainers, these are athletes, these are not scholars, these are individuals who typically have a sense of race loyalty or being black minded or even think along the lines of race first. We also find that if we have a celebrity or entertainer or an athlete that is, of course, considered that, they typically are promoted as problematic. One of the better examples of that today, contemporary example of that today, would be Jayden Brown. The fact that he is actually intelligent. This man went to, of course, UC Berkeley. I think he has some type of alliance with Harvard. And we don't have to get into, of course, the history of racism at Harvard, but if you get my point, he's intellectually astute. This is a man who plays chess. This is an individual who starts to question things. I even put up a post, a reel on my platform maybe a week or two ago with Coach John Thompson. You might may know him for of course, being the coach of Greyhound, Hoyer Paranoia, right? He talked about the intelligent athlete is a problem for the system because they begin to ask questions, right? This, of course, makes me think of course, Frederick Douglass, where he talks about that uneducated, when once you're educated, you're not fit to be a slave, right? And I'm not saying that being an athlete and being a multimillionaire is analogous to being a slave, but you do begin to question and see that how things are set up is not beneficial to us as a people. And see, for me, it's the NFL deal. That was his sellout move. But then that would mean that at some point he was for the people. I'm not sure he ever was. I think that is a great point there. But yes, that was a major issue, particularly when the NFL was going around to other music execs, music moguls, and Jay-Z was telling individuals, particularly Jermaine Dupri, you shouldn't take the deal. And then he takes the deal, and then he's, of course, really poo-pooing and saying we're beyond what Kaepernick is talking about, right? And we know part of protesting is about raising awareness about an issue. I know Kaepernick was serious because when I listened to, of course, listen to him in interviews, you could tell he was well read. I knew where he was getting the information from. And for you to be well read, that means you're serious. You have to take time out to actually do the reading. Give him a pass on a target deal, though. So I would love to hear from you, Snapshot. You know that the link's in the description. I'm gonna put the link in the chat. Please let me know why you're arguing a pass on a target deal. But also, we need to go back to the Brooklyn Nets issue. We need to talk about the Def Jam issue. And maybe the term sellout isn't a good word. Don't have a problem with that. Maybe the concern is that he leverages black support, right? Or he cosplays as doing something that will be beneficial for the black community, but inherently is simply beneficial to himself, and oftentimes a detriment to the black community. Of course, I mentioned the example with the Brooklyn Nets. I mentioned, of course, the issue when he was CEO and president of Def Jam Records. Many believe that this will be a watershed moment, of course, in the hip hop industry, where now you would have someone who is an artist and understands the perspective of an artist in a position to actually do benefit artists. And we know that did not take place. So he actually did the exact opposite. Snapshot, what's the word over there from Jolly Old London?
How you doing? Everyone's tuned in to the England match, the World Cup.
Okay, so, who are they playing?
They're playing Argentina.
Interesting. Okay. Well, you know, I'm not following because there aren't any black teams in there, so I'm not following. So
all the black teams have dropped out now, been knocked out. So we just want them to beat Argentina. I don't really care who wins. I just want them to beat Argentina.
So anyway, why are you opposed to Argentina winning?
Well, they've just been rigging it. Like, it just seems like the whole tournament just seems to be very rigged in their favor, and Argentina was one of the 3 nations that voted against slavery being recognized as the worst crime against humanity. So F them as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, all right. So your thoughts on this Jay-Z situation?
So Jay-Z, to me, like I said in my comments, like, he's a celebrity, isn't he? So like, they're only really these are people that you can argue don't have problems that can be solved through politics and government. And I think with Jay-Z, when it comes to, he can do whatever business deals he wants to do. I don't like it when he tries to like double back and say like he's part of the culture or he's down for the people, but he's clearly not. The NFL deal, I felt like he really threw Colin Kaepernick under the bus, because Colin was taking a principled stand against the police brutality and stuff, and he was actually getting attention and shining a light on the situation from as far as I can see, and had people actually talking about it. You then run to get Jay-Z to then sit down with the NFL, do a deal with them, and, well, hold on a minute, they fired Colin. As part of your deal, have you tried to help him get a contract back? Have you?
The NFL colluded, the owners colluded to prevent him from, of course, getting another roster spot.
Exactly. Now, Jay-Z jumped up and said, if I remember correctly, "Oh, we all know what the problem is, and we're past kneeling and all of this kind of stuff." But it's
Yeah,
like, he totally like snatched the rug up from underneath the potential for that movement to actually do something. Because if I
yeah.
remember correctly, the NBA players stopped playing as well, didn't they? Because of the police brutality. And
Well, yeah,
I think,
briefly, this was doing, I think when they were in the bubble in Orlando, there was a situation that took place. Players discussed, I think they, for one day, they were on strike or a protest. We're not going to play for one day. And check this out, Obama. They said President
yeah,
Obama reached out to them and said, "No, you need to keep playing because it's going to hurt the economy." Now, typically, when you're protesting, part of your goal is to cause harm to, of course, infrastructure that makes them come to the table and what concede to your demands. This is what
of
we
course,
found with the Montgomery Improvement Association in 1955, Montgomery, Alabama. We talk about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
yeah.
So your boy, Obeezy, right? Once
Ah,
again,
man. I didn't vote for him. You did.
okay, I didn't either, right? And so these
All
are
right.
some issues that we find in terms of black people are now in positions of power, and it's rare that we find black people who are in positions of power using their resources to actually benefit black people in a way that can shift the power dynamic. Right? I got a
Yeah.
homeboy who's a marketing director for in corporate America, Fortune 500 company in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Anytime he gets a project, guess who he hires? Black people.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, listen, we got to shoot this commercial. He had me in a commercial once. I was playing a police officer. Yeah, I
Oh,
was in
that's
a
good,
commercial
man.
playing a police officer. I can't whatever be a police officer. Absolutely not. He hit me up, said, "Listen, man, I know you work out all the time. You got the look. Can you mind if we'll pay you this much? I got the budget. Boom, 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 boom. I drove down into Cincinnati, made it happen. So those are some of the issues. But the biggest issue is that he's marketing himself as someone who's doing something to benefit the community, but the moves he's making, particularly in the corporate arena, are actually detrimental to the community. The greatest
He
example of that would be what happened with the Brooklyn Nets. He said
right.
they said this is not gentrification because Jay-Z is a minority owner in the Brooklyn Nets. I remember this vividly. They had a big billboard of him in Times Square. This is our team. Turns out he owned 1/10 of 1% of the company. And as soon as it was built, he sold off that 1/10 of 1%, right? And then they said, well, another issue is that this is actually going to benefit the black people in that community because you will be able to work at the centers can provide jobs. Then they had black women who were fired for wearing natural hairstyles.
All right. Okay. This is where I'm going to need you to help me understand the consciousness level of the general black population in America. How does Jay-Z being propped up as an owner of is it a basketball team?
Yes.
A basketball team. How does that translate to the public as that's something for black people? I
Well,
don't I
so
don't understand I
yeah.
don't
Well,
understand what the angle is there.
right. Well, the part of that is the marketing. The part of it is marketing, right? The second issue is, and I'm quite sure this is the case in the UK. I haven't been to the UK, but I plan to get there soon. Is you have base level black people who are just working hard, and you could say they may be apolitical, right?
Okay.
Then of course you have a segment of the community who is politically conscious, racially aware, politically astute. And then you have a segment of the community who are just apolitical and have no sense whatsoever and are probably engaging in self-defeating, self-destructive, racially disempowering behavior. But the issue here is the marketing. Part of the issue also is that black people, there's such a desire to see black people do well that typically people don't ask those questions. I give you an example. I remember a couple of years back, people were trying to say that not Dr. King, LeBron James was a black leader. LeBron James is the furthest thing from a black leader that you can find, right? But one of the reasons is because there was such a a dearth. There's a lack of black leadership that people are now trying to place that on anyone they can.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm. Uh, yeah. I mean, back to like Jay-Z and that, but like, the reason I said I kind of give him a pass on the Target thing is that I don't really understand the Target boycott and who decided that yes, we're gonna boycott Target and for what specific reason. I heard
Yes. So
that
I can tell you why.
it was because
I
they
can tell you
rolled
why.
back the DEI program. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes. So
Now,
they capitulated to Trump.
right. Now, when that came out, I can't remember who it was. Someone done some research into it, and it seemed like the DEI program didn't necessarily benefit black people anyway. It was like a whole heap
That
of
was an
other
argument
people.
that was being made. Yes.
Right. Now, was that true or not?
That I don't know. I didn't do any research on it. However,
Right.
what I can, it's almost like affirmative action, right? We know that affirmative action, particularly here in America, I can't speak if you all have affirmative action in the UK, primarily benefits. It was created by LBJ, right, to benefit African Americans. However, is the way the bill was written is what minority. So anyone who identifies as other than a heterosexual white Christian male could be defined as a minority. And so we find
Right.
that that the number one beneficiary of affirmative action, particularly in America, is white women. However, if someone
Right.
says we want to strike down, of course, affirmative action, we do know that they're doing that because there's a belief that this benefits black people.
Right. So if they got rid of a program that's not benefiting black people, what's the harm in him doing business with them? Because it wasn't helping black people in the first place. And if you were already a business owner, already doing business with Target before whoever it was decided to make this boycott popular, are you supposed to just cease your business? Are you supposed to just stop all sort of trade and stuff if they're one of your biggest clients? And if you
Right.
carry on working with them, are you considered a sellout?
And
See, that's why
I think that that is a great question because then it comes down to, or yesterday you say on principle I'm not going to work with them. They of course eliminated the DEI program. Then the question would be, okay, how much of your revenue comes from this organization, right? Comes from doing business with them, and if you leave them, who is going to pick up the slack? That is something you have to consider. So if you have a company that makes, but let's just say you make 800,000
yeah,
gross a year before taxes, before you got to pay everybody out, right? And your business with Target does is about 60% of your annual revenue, right? If you leave them, where are you going to be to make up the headway? The second issue is I could understand that argument, right? If you're already in business with them, but the issue is the fact that Jay-Z wasn't in business with them before, and that once again, this is a situation where he's coming in a way to really throw shade at the black community and what the black community is doing. It's almost
yeah,
like I'm not black, I'm OJ type situation. Like I get it. Like if you are already doing business with them, well then one person would say, "Well, you're Jay Z, you're multi-millionaire. You could stop doing business with someone that's not going to affect your bottom line, right?" But let's just say we take that out the box. If he was already doing business with them, okay, fine. Maybe you saying I'm a businessman first. I don't focus on principle, racial issues, whatever. But the fact that you weren't doing business with them and you purposely chose to then do business with them as a way to what it seems to be publicly turn your nose up at the black community. Because
yeah,
in fact, when he had his concert at Yankee Stadium, he had a freestyle where he was dismissing the people who were criticizing him doing a deal with Target. And one of the things he said, well, yeah, I did a deal with Target, and you talking about protesting, but you're on Instagram, and that's owned by this company. And then you're on YouTube, and that's owned by this company. So who are you really protesting? So so that he's this right. So it's almost like I said, to the point where it's about no, I'm going to do what's in my best interest, but I'm going to market myself as if I'm working for the best interest of our community.
yeah. You see, because the thing what I noticed about him was, it was it was when Trump got in the first time. That's when you start to see Jay-Z putting locks in his hair
Yeah,
and trying to be this alternative version and trying to be like market himself like he's conscious and he's this, that, the other.
yeah,
But really and truly, he's just an opportunist, isn't he?
absolutely, yeah,
Like
absolutely.
he knew there would be a back, which well, the the backlash to Obama was Trump, and then he knew that there would be a backlash to Trump, so he
Trump,
would position himself that way. Because I'm sure when all this police violence and all that stuff was happening during Obama's time, and he had direct access to Barack Obama pretty much, but he never said anything about it then.
Never said a
Do you know
word.
what I mean? Like, it's almost like once Obama's out of the office and Trump's there, it's easy to oppose Trump, isn't it? Like, you're not going to lose any social credit with anyone by calling out Trump, are you?
Right.
But like, you might do that if you say, "Oh, Mr. Obama, you're the president at the moment, and a lot of our brothers are getting murdered by the police, and they seem to be getting away with it, and there's no protection for them. Can you look into it?" You're more likely to get pushback from people for doing that than saying, "Oh, Trump's a racist" or whatever. That's easy to say, but yeah, just it's really sad, because it's like they never find, whenever it comes to like politics or some serious social issues, they never find someone who knows about these topics to talk to. It's always a rapper, or it's always an athlete. It's always someone that's not. Yeah, that's not.
They don't go to the tenured professor of African American Studies at Duke University, or they don't talk to Dr. Molefi K. Asante, right? Right. They don't talk to him. Right. They don't do any of that. Right. Let's see here. LMA says in 2006, Jay-Z called for the boycott of Cristal because he felt Cristal made slight against him or hip hop as a whole. Then turned around and announced the NFL kneeling in the Target boycott. He rapped. He could sell water to a well. He could sell salt to a snail. Should we be surprised? Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and during that time, there were a number of rappers who, matter of fact, there was an article in the Source magazine, of course, considered the Bible of hip hop and R&B. I actually subscribed to the Source, where they talked about how a lot of rappers were giving a lot of companies, or particularly white-owned companies, free promotion. Pastor Cavassier, right? Cristal, you got to say Cristal, right? We talked about was it Young Dro? He was always wearing polo. He's like, man, but they won't even give me a marketing deal. So we don't give a crap about you. You're giving us free marketing.
Exactly. But once again, swinging back to the Target thing, I'm just trying to think, like, what is his angle with this thing? Because with Target, it's about his first album, isn't it? Oh, it's like a special edition of his first album.
Yeah, Reasonable Doubt, that came out 30 years ago. Yeah.
Right. So now I'm just assuming this. I'm assuming that it's mainly black people that might buy that. Yeah. I'm just assuming, yeah. But if black people are boycotting Target, how is it going to make sense?
I'm sorry. Actually, the number one consumers of hip hop in America are white people.
Oh, okay. All right then. Yeah. Well then that makes sense then.
Yeah.
Number one consumers, I guess that makes sense.
Hip hop in America are racist middle America. Even Talib Kweli said something about that. Black people are not boycotting Target. So Summer, none of the Betty, tap in, want to hear from you. You say black people are not boycotting Target. So my presumption is you're saying that the boycott ended, and as a result, this should be a non-issue. So if I'm wrong, please tap in and of course square me away. The link is in the description, link is in the chat. You're watching LumuSpeaks.com at Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting in black, in conjunction, of course, with Bequalon Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African news and information. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and donate. Hit that super chat, y'all. So, is Jay-Z a sellout? Just no, I'm not sure it ended, but I know for sure that black people did not boycott Target. But that I don't know. But black people were boycotting Target. In fact, I had some individuals probably about a year ago who were on my platform, and they were discussing how successful that boycott of Target was, right? So there were individuals. As a matter of fact, I think one of the individuals who was pushing that was ADOS individual. So black people were boycotting Target, at least I know at this time last year. But I think what the real issue is that there just seems to be a track record, a running record of Jay-Z putting himself in a position to actually undermine social or political positions made by the black community. I think that is the concern here.
But do you know what the other issue is? is like when people do stuff like this, there's no consequence.
Right.
There's no consequence to him doing that
Yeah.
because, you know, especially if he's still going to go on to sell that album and that album ends up, you know, giving him a nice boost of change and stuff, he's going to be like, well, there was no price to pay.
Well,
So,
yeah. And let's just say that black people say we're not supporting Jay-Z anymore. Black people don't, we won't buy his albums. We won't show up to his concerts. We don't support anything he does. He's still a multimillionaire,
yeah.
right? And he's still married and have his family. So he's in a position where he's actually able to insulate himself from, of course, the wrath of the black community. And we know he goes out of his way, at least we've seen publicly, to ingratiate themselves with whites. This is the
Yeah.
reality. And you know, because I'm a big Nas fan, but this is something Nas said about Jay-Z 25 years ago. He said that about him 25 years ago.
Yeah, but see, well, Nas again. Here's someone who gave Gwyneth Paltrow the pass to say the N word. Like
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. When
they're
I
all the
found that out,
same.
I was like, what in the heck? I said, what in the AT double hockey sticks is going on here?
All right, let's be honest with ourselves, right? And I'm not saying all of them, right? Yeah, because I know it's not all of them, but the majority of rappers make their living being a modern day minstrel show,
Correct.
displaying some of the worst negative
It's
images of our
stereotypical
people.
and stereotypical behavior, stereotypical.
Right. So
Yeah.
what level of like, I don't know, racial pride or consciousness or black leadership that can we possibly realistically expect from these people?
Right. Yes, and this is why Malcolm X said that these individuals are puppets. They're puppets. They're clowns. Right? I mean, what matter of fact, I'm going back to an inner child moment. I recall, you know, growing up watching Spider-Man the animated series about 30 years ago, and so sometimes I would have my children watch some of these episodes that I grew up watching because there typically are lessons in them, right? X-Men animated series,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah,
And so there's a scene with his brother. He's a low time street thug, and Homie Brown was his name, and he goes to prison and he saves the Kingpin's son. And so the Kingpin was able to get him out of jail on technicality regarding the parole violation, and he gives him this suit, this powered
yeah.
suit,
I've
and
seen that episode.
he
Yeah,
calls himself the Prowler,
yeah.
and he said no strings attached. And then of course it comes back there are strings, and the Kingpin says the best puppeteers don't use strings.
Mm.
Yeah, the best puppeteers don't use strings.
Yeah.
Right, and one of the things that, of course, Charles Mills talks about in his book, The Racial Contract. Everyone needs to read this book. The Racial Contract is actually canonical text in the field of Black studies, Africana studies, Pan African studies, whatever you want to call it. Shout out to the brother. He's from Jamaica. He's transitioned, but he was a Himothy, not a Timothy. He was him, not them, literally. Charles Mills, The Racial Contract, and of course, his work was basically the basis of my dissertation. He talks about that part of the goal of the racial contract is, of course, miseducation, the education or manipulation of the African mind to get us to believe that what we're doing is of our own free will.
Oh wow, man.
Yes. Matter of fact, I'm gonna actually read the excerpt from the book. Give me 1 second. I'm actually gonna read this excerpt from the book because I sent it to a brother the other day. He was just like, "Whoa." Yeah, so give me 1 second. I'm gonna bring this up. Yes, here we go. And he states that he talks about racism. Right? He says the effect of a cultural bomb is to annihilate the people's belief in their names and their languages and their environment and their heritage of struggle and their unity and their capacities and ultimately in themselves. So he's, of course, he's building the work of Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who was the activist and educator who was from Kenya, who, of course, later transitioned. He transitioned last year in Georgia, May of last year in Georgia. He talks about the culture bomb of colonial education. But he says it makes them see their past as one wasteland of non-achievement, and it makes them want to distance themselves from that wasteland. Racism as an ideology needs to be understood as aiming at the minds of non-whites as well as whites, inculcating subjugation. If the social contract requires that all citizens and persons learn to respect themselves and each other, the racial contract prescribes non-white self-loathing, racial deference to white citizens. The ultimate triumph of this education is that it eventually becomes possible to characterize the racial contract as consensual and voluntaristic, even for non-whites.
Mm.
Yeah. So you actually are engaging in behaviors that not only weaken your community but empowers theirs, and you think you're doing it under your own volition. But as Dr. Carter G. Woodson taught us in 1933, in his, of course, seminal text, Miseducation of the Negro, this is being done because our education makes it necessary. Or in the words of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, miseducation makes it
Yeah.
necessary.
Hmm.
And so this is something I also want to bring up for the dialogue, Kenyatta. And we've had, of course, a number of back and forths where we disagree on particular issues in the Black community, particularly in reference to Pan-Africanism. That's right, because we know Pan-Africanism is not monolithic. But one of the things he always talked about was, criminals are marketed as these Robin Hood type figures in our community. And one of the things that really promotes is, of course, is hip hop music, or rap music. I call it rap, not hip hop. But this concept of this is a Robin Hood type figure. But he says what you really find is criminals and even, of course, rappers in the community, their goal is actually be part of the establishment, not to fight against the establishment.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is that they're promoting this concept of conspicuous consumption. Right? Well,
Yeah.
individuals who have a behavior typically are individuals who are what? The oligarchs, the plutocrats, the super wealthy, the individuals who, of course, are, leeching off the labor of course, what the downtrodden, the dispossessed, and the despondent, right? So there's a lot that goes. I mean, I wish I could have had him on the platform because he really goes in a rather brilliant manner about how, of course, criminals, rappers, they're promoting this concept as if they're somehow revolutionary, like counterculture, but in reality, they're doing everything they can to actually be part of the very culture that they are marketing themselves as being vehemently opposed to.
But based on the text that you just read, you would say that would you say, sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth, would you say then that Jay-Z's actions are not of his own choosing? He's been programmed to act the way he acts, and he doesn't just act like that because that's just what he wants to do.
Well, so I think I think there's a caveat there, right?
Yeah.
I would argue we all, to some condition, have been programmed, and we have to do the work to deprogram ourselves, right? One of the things that we promote on this platform. The second issue is he is a 50-some, almost 60-some-year-old man. At some point, I would argue he's making a choice, but I would argue that what contributed to that choice was at some point some base level of programming to where I want to be in community, I want to be like, and what we've seen find this a lot with our people is to where, in order to be accepted by that particular group, means that somehow I've made it.
Yeah. I mean, I was listening to a Dame Dash interview earlier today, funny enough. And obviously I don't want to speak for it because I've never lived there, but the way he was describing like the neighborhoods and stuff that he kind of grew up in, that like he was saying like, this place is hell. I just wanted to get out of that. And the way he was talking, it was like anything that was associated with that place, anything that wasn't associated with that place, that was far away from that, he was articulating it as a sign of success.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if, because I'm sure not everyone lives in, it's not only like black people that live in these neighborhoods that he was sort of like describing. I'm sure there are people from all other communities that also live in similar conditions, but it's unfortunate that in his mind that's labeled with black, when there are people that live in like similar like neighborhoods and stuff that might have the same characteristics from loads of different communities, I would imagine.
Yeah, so that's something that we find that's very common as well. This concept of wanting to get out of the hood. I got to work hard to get out of the hood, right? I think of Dr. John Henry Clark, who of course is one of our greatest scholars. He lived in Harlem his entire adult life. Right, once he moved to New York, he lived in Harlem. Even when he became him, right, when he was a world-renowned scholar and author, right, he still lived in Harlem. If I remember correctly, it was on 131st Street. Right, so Not everyone, of course, takes to that thinks that way. There are some legitimate reasons why some individuals will engage in what's considered black flight. Part of it would be because of crime in the community. It just may not be. It's just not safe for you to have children and raise children in a particular environment that is rife with, of course, street level crime. That is understandable, makes sense, right? That's not something I'm going to, of course.
Yeah, but why is that not just seen as a criminal thing? Why is that seen as black? Like that's what I don't understand. Like it's like there are. I'm sure I've never been there, but I'm sure there are parts in America where there are um, impoverished neighborhoods, crime-ridden places that
Yes,
are more than just black people living there. But
yes,
why is it
absolutely.
that it's their mind defaults to that means black? I don't understand that.
Well, I wouldn't argue that it defaults to being black, but I do know. I was just talking about in terms of for black people, there's a term called black flight, and that's when black
Right.
people means middle class black people, but leave a particular neighborhood due to a number of issues, and one of which in particular was criminal activity. But there are other people who do the same thing: whites, Latinos, Asians, Jews as well. That if they're in a community that there's a growing criminal element, they're going to leave, particularly if they have a family.
Yeah, but do they look at that as oh, Latino? That's a Latino like area, or do they just look at it as crime ridden?
I couldn't speak for another racial group.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. I just don't like the idea of us just always thinking the worst of us. Like,
yeah, I agree. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, if something's criminal, oh, that's black. It's not black. It's a poverty thing, probably in most instances. And
yeah,
you put anyone on the breadline, they might end up doing things that they never thought they would have done were they not on the breadline. It's not necessarily a racial thing,
right.
but I don't know. Maybe we're getting a bit off tangent there, but
No, no, no.
yeah,
I think you're cooking. I think you're cooking.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, until there's a way of like making these people be held accountable for something, unfortunately, I think things like this are just going to keep happening. I
Yeah,
mean, I
and,
know
and then
the late.
and you
Go
know
on.
this. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we
No.
look at it globally that whenever African people, Black people, whatever term, of course, floats your boat, what align with the ruling class against their own people, they typically are lavishly rewarded.
Yeah.
Right. Let me give you some examples globally. Right. What was that individual? He was the president of Cote d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast, right? And he actually allowed the Ivory Coast to be a base to stage the CIA coup against Nkrumah. He was
Yeah.
rewarded lavishly. We talk about Mobutu in the Congo, rewarded lavishly. We talk about Papa Doc in Haiti, of course, for
Yeah.
what he was doing to his own people, but he was getting millions of dollars from the U.S. government, right? We can talk about that the individual who turned state's evidence and was a agent for the FBI and actually was able to coordinate the assassination of Fred Hampton in Chicago. They gave him $500,000 in a gas station to run. Individuals that turn against our people are rewarded lavishly by the power structure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
that what
mean,
they
the
say
late.
is so from for what we're finding here, there's a lack of course, racial loyalty, or what some people would call maybe Brother Jabril Africa would call racial integrity, right? Because they say, okay, I have solidarity for my people, or I can have these millions. And what most people are going to say, particularly nowadays, is what if you ain't got no money, yon, you can't get the job what done, yon.
Mm, yeah. I mean, the latest one in the frame is Nicki Minaj, I think, because
Mm-hmm.
she done something with Trump, and the next thing you know, he's dropping bombs on Nigeria. Like it's it's yeah, it's depressing, man. Like you think like it's just gonna be a new day, or like people are starting to be a bit more socially conscious, and now we're all a bit more connected because of the internet and stuff like that. But it just seems to just be highlighting the growing class of sellouts amongst us, really, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, Nicki Minaj would be a great example as well. Yes, William O'Neill. Yes, LMA. Shout out to LMA dribbling down the VA. Yes, William O'Neill was his name. So this is something that we find. right? That is the norm. That they're going to be rewarded lavishly, of course, by those in power. Another, two, of course, go against the benefit or the benefit of one's community. So yeah, and like I said, we find this globally. I just provided three examples, right? One in the United States, one in the West Indies, the Caribbean, and of course one on the continent. So this is something that is very common.
But in the case of Jay-Z, like, because it's sort of like you've got to a level, you because you would think that someone's got to such a financial level and a level of success where you wouldn't have to grovel, or you wouldn't have to kiss ass, or you wouldn't have to bend yourself into a pretzel to fit into a group that don't are really only tolerating you being there just because of the size of your bank account, really. And otherwise they probably would not be meeting with you or talking to you or doing anything like that. You'd think you'd get to that level where you don't need to do that stuff, but it's almost
Well,
like he's doubling down or tripling down.
let me say this snapshot, and I'm quite sure you've come across this in Jolly. Are you in London? Are you in Greater London?
I'm just outside London. I'm in
Okay,
the
good.
south. I'm in the southeast of the
Okay,
country.
southeast. Okay, so but you're near the Thames River, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm quite sure you've come in contact with individuals, and I'm quite sure you crossed the Channel, gone to France on a number of occasions too. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Who,
Yes.
irrespective of their social economic standing, still drool in the faces of them folks. Am I right or wrong?
You are right.
It doesn't matter. You like, dude, like you're a millionaire. Like, what are you? Some of it is ideological. They're just in love with them. It's almost like you might meet a woman and you like, man, she's drop dead gorgeous, and she with some guy who's a loser or he beating the brakes off of her, but she has low self esteem. There are some black people who simply have low racial esteem. They just don't think highly of themselves because of their race, and so as a result, they need that external validation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And part of that is the same as we talk about, of course, it be a man or a woman, they have that low self esteem. What? Because the work that needed to be done to cultivate that wasn't done when they were a child, and so now it's readily apparent as an adult.
Yeah.
Right? Right. Let me give you an example. A snapshot. How old are you?
44.
Oh, okay. You older than me. All right. Very good.
Right.
Did you grow up with your pops?
Not in the house, but like school holidays and stuff like that. I would spend time with him.
Okay. So let me ask, and I hope I'm not being too invasive. If I am, you could.
No. It's cool. It's cool.
But when you spent time with your dad growing up, did you all ever horseplay or wrestle and do things like that?
Yeah, of course.
Right. And when you did those things, it allowed you to have a sense of confidence in yourself if you were ever in a situation where you had to defend yourself, correct?
Yes.
Now, imagine you come in contact with young men who didn't grow up in any relationship with their father. They never got that. The horseplay, they put your dukes up, let me see your combinations, move your head out the way, any of that. And then when you find them in a situation where they have to defend themselves, don't they tend to behave in a very erratic manner? Aren't you able to tell that they're unsure of themselves?
Yes, that's true. I see it
Same
at the
thing.
college. I see it
Yeah,
at the
same
college that I
thing.
work at. Yeah.
Same thing is applicable here.
Hmm.
If you don't do that work early, right? Because this is something that Sasha Shakur discussed in her memoir. If you haven't read Sasha Shakur's memoir, make sure you do. Matter of fact, I'm gonna give you all a primer for today's Black History Fact. Tomorrow's Black History Fact is tomorrow is Queen Mother Sasha Shakur, now ancestor. Tomorrow's her birthday. And
Okay.
one of the things that she mentions in her memoir was that growing up, watching television, fashion magazines, beauty magazines, etc., everything was geared toward white was the paragon of beauty, paragon of civilization, paragon of social structure, etc. She says, and so when she got older, she realized that she was being programmed, right? Not only to view white people as superior, to put them on a pedestal, to be deferential to them, but also to view black as something that was less than a negative. And so, if you don't address that issue early and you're proactive, not reactive, you can see that manifest when the person's an adult. So very quickly, F5R says we got to stop using the term sellout so loosely. If anything, he's a sellout for selling drugs to his people before he blew up. But everyone wants to praise that aspect of his career. You know what? You're cooking with fish grease, 5R, 248. If you can tap in and be part of the conversation, I'm you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. I'm so happy you brought that up. You're absolutely right. He was a sellout when he was selling drugs to his people. You're absolutely right. So we're gonna call him that. We need to start from the basis. But this is why we have this is a learning community, right? Because this isn't a situation in which I'm simply being didactic. This is a situation in which we're able to learn from each other. And when we have those type of true we have a true learning community. We have individuals who could come in and of course put me on point and say, you know what, you're absolutely right. He was a sellout when he was selling drugs to our people. That's not something that should be praised. That's something that should be loathed. And it shows that this man is a parasite. He's someone who has a long and virulent history of preying on the despondent and downtrodden in our community. Where he states in one of his songs, he was selling hope for despair. Absolutely. F5R248. I definitely appreciate your commentary here.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, that isn't it? Because you can also build upon that by saying, in the lyrics, in the music, it still goes on to degrade in some of his tracks, degrade black women. Maybe
Yeah.
he's promoting more of that lifestyle in some of his songs and stuff like that. So it then compounds. What do you think about, like, say someone has started off like that and they were a drug dealer and stuff like that, but then later on in life they're no longer doing that stuff? Do they get a chance to lose that label and redeem themselves?
Well, I think there's a couple of issues. One of the things, and I can say this as someone who I was not a criminal, but I was adjacent to criminal activity. Of course, I couldn't be a criminal as an adolescent because my dad would have killed me, right? You know what I'm saying? There's just no way
Right.
around that.
Okay. Yeah.
I grew up with my father in the home every single day.
Yeah.
But when I left home, of course, I did dabble in some street activity, being a miscreant for a couple years. And one of the things that I can say is yes, you can reform yourself. I think Malcolm X is a great example of that. We know that Malcolm X was at one point a drug dealer, a pimp, a pusher. He was doing engaging in a number of illicit activities to make money. Um, but Malcolm also, of course, acknowledged that some of the damage he did, some probably he could never actually provide retribution for. So that's something that you have to look at. But I think the brother or sister is right. FR, that's not something that should be praised. And I think when someone is doing that, then we have to look at them as, of course, being sellout. But one of the biggest things, and typically in terms of hip hop or rap, is if you really want to be taken seriously in the hip hop or rap community, you have to have street credibility. You have to have street cred, meaning you made your bones by engaging in illicit activity. And this the issue I always have is that when the individual engaging in illicit activity, who are they engaging in illicit activity against? Who's the victims? Black people.
Yeah.
Well, what did 50 Cent say? Big old black tech, big old black nine. I clap your monkey ass, black on black crime.
Mm.
Yeah, and so this is something that is praised. Well, what did KRS-One say? We talked about hip hop. He said here's the difference between hip hop and rap. He says rappers spit lines that are mostly illegal. MCs spit rhymes to uplift their people.
Yeah, MC seem to be a dying breed these days.
Yeah. Peace, love, unity, having fun. These are the lyrics of KRS-One. Or as Cameron said, he says, Rex in a winner where the youth can play. They don't even shoot the J, sell drugs, shoot and spray. I'm no better. Still move a deuce a day. That's two keys. I still move the yay. In fact, Jadakiss, we know the rapper Jadakiss, Jada, got beef with the feds and the DJ got footage of plus replay, right? He talked about that when he was working on one of his solo albums, one of the suits, he said this wasn't a black person, a white man in the suit, told him this song doesn't have enough N words and MFers in it. You need to rewrite the song. Because like when you are working on an album, you can say, okay, I finished the album. You send it to, of course, the A&R, and then of course you have a meeting with the higher ups in the record label, and they tell you what they think of the album. It says this is a white man in a suit telling him this. You don't have enough N words in the song. You don't have enough MFers in the song. You need to write it again.
And do you think that was happening, like when you had like other companies like that were majority black owned, like Def Jam and all that, running like hip hop, like they would still have people telling them that? Or do you think it's when it all became amalgamated under like 2 or 3 music
Well, yeah.
labels?
So I think so. You're always going to have a company reviewing your work. Right? LL Cool J was the first flagship artist for Def Jam. Right? So if he finishes his album, you're going to come in. They're going to say, okay, this is what we think of the album. This is what we think the lead single should be. You should take this song off. Right. But I would argue, and of course I'm speculating here, but based on what I've read, you didn't find the push for promoting self-defeating, self-destructive behavior until whites began to control and own hip hop. And that's one of the issues I have with Tariq Nasheed, where he manufactured a problem saying, well, black people, African Americans, we created hip hop. That's immaterial. The real issue is who owns and controls it, because they are able to control the messaging. They control industry, right? And so a great example was, if you're familiar with the hip hop group, the Black Eyed Peas. Many people are unaware that the initial lead, the female lead in the Black Eyed Peas was a black woman. Now, you can still find this article. You do the Google search. She was dropped by the record label from the group because she refused to make sexually suggestive music. And they told her, these are the record labels, the suits, and they don't look like us, told her, you're not black enough, because you don't want to make sexually suggestive music. This was in 2000, so of course they replaced her with Fergie, the white woman, and next thing you know, they're making songs about my hump, my lovely lady hump, etc. So this is something that's very common. Another group, I think the Diggable Planets or Digital Planets was a hip hop group. They were from Philadelphia. They were kind of known for, the backpack rap. Great group. I remember them when they were out. They had 2 successful albums. Their rap was, because as a matter of fact, they had one of the lead singles was Where I'm From. There's a TV One has had a actual special on that group, and one of the things in the song, they was like, they talk about Karl Marx and Where I'm From, because they was from Philly, and before you knew it, the record label came to them and said, we want you to make more aggressive music. We want you to start promoting criminality. They said, well, that's not what we're about. They just dropped them from the record label. Deuces, bye. Wow. now you ain't got a job. Now what? Be principled all you want. Yeah. Let me see if I can pull this up. Diggable Planets. Yeah, because I was a big fan of their work in the mid 90s.
Because I noticed a shift in hip hop when
Digital Planets. I'm right. Yeah, Diggable Planets. Yes.
I was going to say, I noticed a shift in hip hop when Jay-Z became Def Jam president, because it seemed like a lot of the artists, particularly on Def Jam, just couldn't release music. And he was saying to them like, I've been an artist, so I know what it's like. So I'm going to make sure everyone gets their time to shine, and everyone gets to get their music out and all that kind of stuff. But in hindsight, it was almost like he was just like blocking the competition from coming out. And I think DMX talks about it in one of his interviews on The Breakfast Club. And it's almost like he stopped all the potential rappers that could challenge him from releasing music, and only he was releasing and stuff. And then slowly but surely they all dropped out off of the label, and then Def Jam gets incorporated into, I can't remember who they got incorporated into. It might have been Sony or one of them, things like that. But you don't have those independent black labels anymore.
Absolutely. So it was, the group was Diggable Planets. They had 2 albums, and actually TV One, they have a program called Unsung, and so they actually aired that episode June 3rd, 2018. I actually vividly remember that. And once again, when they refused to make what was considered aggressive, because they did jazz hip hop and alternative hip hop, they dropped them from the record label. Now, so this is something that we find is very common.
Now, one of my earliest memories of hip hop was watching Yo MTV Raps one Saturday morning, because he used to come on Saturday mornings over here. and Fight the Power by Public Enemy, the video
Mhm.
came out. Yeah. So you got people in that video like marching on the street. There's like a parade or a protest or something like that
Mhm.
is kind of the video. And you've got the guys in their combat gear doing their stuff and all that kind of stuff. And it was like a real sense of like black pride or black
Mhm.
culture was like transmitted through that. And it's like what happened to that level of consciousness,
Absolutely.
that
Well,
level
so,
of
so yeah, and there's a couple things. One, when hip hop first was created, it was considered a fad. Many people saw it as a fad, similar to disco, that would come, have a flash in the pan moment. It would be ephemeral, and then of course, it would of course fall, go away in the ether, fade into the ether. When they saw the staying power of course, hip hop, that's when, of course, the white multinational corp- corporations, record companies began to what? Co-op hip hop and start to put out this more aggressive brand of rap that many argue was appealing to the, of course, m- medium American white person, right? Matter of fact, there's a documentary titled 500 Years Later that, of course, was directed by Malefic Asante Jr., who was the son of Malefic Asante Sr., who, of course, is the head of Africology, the Department of Africology at Temple University. And of course, he wrote the canonical text Afrocentricity in 1980, published it anyway. And one of the things one of the guys talks about, and the brother that's saying this on the show, he's from the UK. He talks about this type of music makes racist middle America comfortable. He says that you have someone on here rapping about something that's intelligent, it makes white people uncomfortable. Matter of fact, there's a scene in the movie, or the Tupac movie, where Tupac had a song titled "Brenda's Got a Baby," where he talks about this black young lady being killed, having a baby, 12, 13 years old, and being, the leader in Oakland. This is a true story, by the way. And there's a scene in the movie where he's going back and forth with the record executives, and they're like, "We don't want you to actually play how this song on the album." Even though it was highlighting a real issue in the community, it wasn't glamorizing or glorifying, of course, criminality or behavior. It actually was addressing real issues in terms of course, parenting, drug addiction, child molestation, etc. They said no. They were vehemently opposed to it.
mm,
So this is something that we find that's why I said, Tweet Nasheed, I think he's a charlatan, because the reality situation is the focus needs to be on not who created hip hop, but who owns and controls it.
yeah,
Because whoever controls it is they're able to disseminate a message, not only to the masses, but they're able actually to curate and shape and cultivate what the image of your ethnic group to the world. We're talking about something Kevin Samuels talked about in terms of this ethnic image. The ethnic image of African Americans is criminal. And part of that is because who owns television and music? It isn't black people,
mm,
right? I can recall
yeah,
vividly when I was in undergrad in graduate school. And right, so I did a double master's because you got to overachieve, right? And one of my masters was in African studies. I'm sitting in
yep,
the classroom, and you may know Snapshot. I have a lot of tattoos, but all my tattoos are cultural, right? They have significant meaning. They're focused, rooted in medieval, classical, and of course contemporary African history.
okay,
And the sister was from Cameroon. I mean, she was looking like her in that mug, though. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
so, and she's like, "Man, Lumumba, I thought you were a criminal, a thug." I'm like, "Well, why? Well, you work out a lot. You got the muscles and the tattoos." I'm like, "Why would a thug be a master's student at a university?" But that's the
yeah,
power of the ethnic image. We don't control that. We don't control it. And so they're able to disseminate who we are and to the world. And one of the things, of course, and then I did a show on David Banner. We talked about the pseudo intellectualism of David Banner, and he is a pseudo intellectual. And I say that, I would say it to his face. I even emailed him about my very show and tried to get him on the platform, but of course he wouldn't. But one of the things he did mention, he says, I realized that I was contributing to a adverse or negative ethnic image of African Americans. He said he was performing in one of the Scandinavian European countries like Sweden, Norway, or something like that. And he realized that the type of music he was making was not helping or how we were viewed in the world.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah. I think a lot of them have that moment because I think there was a time, I think it was Kendrick Lamar or something
Hmm.
like that. He brought up some a white girl up on the stage to like rap one of his songs or
Yeah,
whatever,
I remember
and
that.
she
Yeah,
rapped it. She rapped it as he wrote it, and you can't really complain because you wrote
right.
those lyrics. You
You
know what I
wrote the
mean? Like
lyrics. If you
you
have a
wrote the
problem with
lyrics.
people using the N word, then how about you don't include it in your lyrics, you bozo?
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, yeah, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, because
Um,
it really comes down to hypocrisy. I have the same conversation when I talk to sisters. Don't tell me the B word is reprehensible, it's offensive to you, but then you walk right down the street and call one of your girlfriends that. Stop being a hypocrite.
yeah,
That's just my position. I say all the time, people don't respect hypocrites. They don't respect hypocrites. I don't care where you go. You could go to what? The UK. You could be in Sacramento, California. You could go to what? New Zealand, right? And all points in between. You could be in Botswana, right? Where they speak Swanswana. I can't even recall the language they speak, but I used to date a sister from Botswana once. People don't respect hypocrites. So don't take a striding position if you're not going to walk that line consistently. You feel what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Last question. Last question before I go because I've got to go shortly. Um, in terms of like this whole another group controls our image, do you think that's a problem that takes place consistently in a society where we are the minority versus if
yeah,
we were living in a place where it was
yes.
all black people, would that still be the same issue?
Well, there's a couple things, right? Of course, if you're in a position where you're a minority, that's going to be an issue, right? We find this with other racial ethnic groups as well, Latinos, Asians. As a matter of fact, when I took a class on social inequality in undergrad to undergraduate, one of the things they talked about was the perception of Asian men in Western media, and they're always considered historically as being sexually impotent, right? They historically Asian men are never played they're never cast in a lead role where they have a female um, romantic interest. I said, damn,
I never
right?
noticed
So,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I didn't notice it either until we went over in class. Like, damn, you got a point there,
yeah,
right? So I said, wow, so that's typically going to take place in a space where you're a minority. However, you could be in a majority black country, but if they're thoroughly colonized, right? They could promote the same images as well. And one of the examples I would give is let's just look here in the United States, right? There are two black institutions that are ran independent of course, the power structure. And so, even though you might disagree with me, the home and the black church. But even in those independent organizations, institutions, typically you find what anti-blackness being promoted.
yeah.
Right? I've been to Africa on numerous occasions. Probably gonna be going back next month, right? And guess what we find? You show up, you go into a black church there, they're promoting anti-blackness. They're promoting the same narratives about African history, culture, religion, etc., that is promoted by what decolonizers. In fact, Dr. Danielle Boaz, I'm still trying to see if we could get back in contact with her to do that lunch and learn about her book Banning Black Gods. She talks about the violence against practitioners of African-derived faiths in the Western world,
Do you
and
know that?
all individuals, and these individuals are facing violence from what black people who are what adherence to Abrahamic faiths.
Do you know what? That's an interesting point you just made because when I was in Zimbabwe, when I was in Zimbabwe, the amount of missionaries I came across was just astounding. Like, and
Mhm.
these are people from like Eastern Europe and Germany and even some people from South America and all that kind of stuff going over to there and other African nations, just like spreading the Bible or talking about
Mhm.
Christianity and things like that. But there was just so many of them. Like every other coach stop or every other like place where we stopped for a rest or we were like traveling through, there was always a busload of them everywhere. Like it was like, yeah, man, like, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
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 All right. Well, this has been a great chat, man. It was a really
Yes,
good
sir.
topic.
Absolutely. I appreciate you. Very quickly, family, before we sign off, tomorrow I have a pre-recorded video, part 19 of our groundbreaking Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, where we chronicle the lives of great Pan-Africans of the past in order to make a better world for African people in the future. And tomorrow, scheduled at 10 a.m. tomorrow, we are going to be dropping a video where we're chronicling their life, legacy, and most importantly, the work of Duty Bookman. Of course, the initial leader of the Haitian Revolution, right? So until next time, family, y'all know what to do. Always, always, always bet on Black. Peace.
Peace.
Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, here at Lumumba Speaks, we always bet on Black. Peace.